We're using a similar rollout to what we did when we introduced a flexibility program back in 2019, pre-COVID. And it was all about gathering those insights. What are the barriers that exist to success? This is where we want to go. What are the barriers? And then we create workshops, behaviour change workshops around that. We create playbooks for managers and people and education and training to get us there. But when we do that, we start at the top.
Welcome to the All in Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify to stay tuned for our weekly episodes. My name is Lydia, and with us today is Pauly Grant of Publicis Groupe. Welcome to the show, Pauly.
Thanks for having me.
So you've had leadership roles overseeing people and talent strategies in the creative space for some years now, Pauly. So how would you describe that journey so far?
Well, it's been a very interesting, inspiring and fulfilling career really in this space. It's quite timely, your question. This week I had a 20-year reunion with all my colleagues from an agency called Naked Communications. And this was really my first role in the creative sector way back in 2005. And I was very fortunate to go into a company like Naked Communications at that time. It was an independent agency, and they really were a disruptor in the UK, in New York and in Australia. And they really had a very strong belief in culture and brand being at the centre of work and the workplace. So I felt like I really cut my teeth on what the meaning of culture and how you actually get the best and create the right environment for people to do their best work. So this is where I was able to test, I was able to experiment and discover really the importance of that ground up culture. Having a clear brand and proposition for your people, and also the belief in everything that you do communicates, whether that's to the way you speak to someone, how you recruit, what you write in your policies, your language that you use, they all reinforce the culture that you have created and that you want to sustain. So we did a lot of work back then around the physical environment that we work in. So how do we make that intriguing? How do we enable people in the workplace? Expressions of values. How do we do that in an interesting way, not just words on a paper? And that really started to allow people to create and innovate, which is obviously super important in a creative industry. I then took this knowledge and learning and moved into my first role at Publicis 11 years ago, which was at Zenith Media. So a slightly different, same industry, but obviously creative media, different parts of that sphere. And it was really interesting because it was my first foray into a company within a larger holding company. Publicis Groupe has 100,000 staff worldwide. So it was a very different scenario for me. And that was really interesting as a leader in this space around people to actually challenge myself of how do I take what I've learned but apply it in a different way, have different measures, and instead of just coming in bull at a gate, how do I work with the organisation and the people to create what they're looking for? So yeah, from that, obviously carried that through to my different roles across Groupe, and then came into this Groupe role a couple of years ago and was able to take those learnings again and really step back. And I have a very strong belief, as does Publicis, in having humanity at the centre of everything we do and really creating a strong human lens on our business decisions. I'm a big believer if you get things right around your people and really view them as part of their whole life experience, and that acknowledgement of what happens outside of work as well as what happens inside of work, and you actually use that as part of a measure of your decisions in business, then you will have success. And I think as part of that, just motivating, caring, and really inspiring people to do their best work has been kind of that narrative all the way along my career.
It's interesting how 20 years ago, such a mindset or such a perspective was considered a disruptor. And so if you look back at 20 years back and your journey so far, how much of that emphasis on culture and communication has changed throughout this period in this space?
Well, people and organisations have definitely, caught on with that, and I think people do it really well. I think it's really interesting. The organisations, probably up to COVID, were very good at the idea of employee experience and how do we create a workplace that's better. And so I think organisations were doing that really well. I think what's happened since then is there's been this shift, and we can't just look at employee experience. We have to look at life experience, because people have started to adjust their priorities. They recognise after COVID that their life is something that they want to have control over in some instances. It's all blended together, whether you're working hybrid, whether you're working remote. And so I think organisations need to take a really big step back now and look at, okay, instead of just making work-life better, how do we make work fit into someone's overall life? And how do we actually recognise that? And that comes with this whole push and need to create a human lens, personalisation. We used to be able to do one policy or initiative for everyone and everyone was happy. It is not the way anymore. So it's become more challenging as HR professionals and for businesses to actually hone in on the different like life stages that people are going through and what their particular needs are, and how as a business do you answer for that. So I think it's kind of moved somewhat, and I think people need to catch up to that next stage. I think also the days that we can just do initiatives and, a yoga class and something else, to me, again, we've really got to stop and look. And I think a lot of the work that we do is really acknowledge the times and the moments where we need to do deep organisational change, and that comes back to your culture piece, because you need to recognise what is happening in your organisation. And if you need to get to A to B, that's not just rolling out a program. Quite often there are behaviours that need to be changed in that organisation. There are processes, there are approaches that happen that need a total overhaul. And so recognising where those moments are and doing the hard work, it might not be able to be rolled out in 3 months. It might actually take you a year if you're going to do proper organisational change. But I think that's something that's really important as you go forward as an organisation, to keep that in mind.
You oversee the APAC and ANZ region, right? So what are some key areas that you've prioritized for Publicis in these regions?
Yeah. So if I think about the last year or recently, maybe I'll start with ANZ. We really felt like in the last couple of years, there is more and more being piled onto our leaders. I think it's becoming a lot more complex. I mean, being a leader has always been a privilege, but there is penalty that comes with that. And there's a lot of responsibility. And I think that responsibility has expanded even more. And I think there's a lot of new aspects and perspectives that we're asking our leaders to have. So we have launched a program called Threads in ANZ Publicis Group, and that's really around how are we threading through the capabilities of leadership to help our senior leaders really have the right tools to be able to go forward, not just in the leadership of others, but also in themselves. So as part of this program, we've really defined what the success of Publicis Group looks like and the leaders within that. We're a highly adaptable, constantly transforming. We need to be at the precipice of new technology for our clients constantly, and what it also means for them and their own energy. So we have a great a module that's being rolled out around their own sustainable energy. and how they actually find it, sustain it, and then are able to give it to others.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really important one that we felt moving forward was important for our leaders. We also have how do they collaboratively work with other CEOs across the agency and other leaders across the group to help grow the organisation. And then we're actually doing a whole session around sustainable leadership and understanding sustainability and what it means for us as leaders and as a business, and the change and impact that we can make on our business. But also we're in a very privileged position to be able to change and make impact to how we look at production, how we look at media and how we spend it for our clients, which has an impact on the environment as well. So that's been really exciting. So that's the ANZ one. I think also around ANZ, we've done a lot of work around disability. We have an ERG group called Enable, and we've recently launched our disability and inclusion plan, and that's been really important. For any people that have visible or invisible disabilities. I have a son who has dyslexia and dysgraphia and ADHD. I'm very passionate about this. Dyslexia, it's apparently 1 in 10 people at a minimum. It could be even more than that. Yet no one talks about it in the workplace. How do we support people with that through technology, through understanding? How do we help managers manage how people work the best way? Because everyone is brilliant in their own right, but how do we actually engage with that? And then if I look at APAC, we're really doubling down on this idea of an internal marketplace. So how do we start to use the skills we have in our organisation to move around, to retain those skills, to retain that knowledge across the region? So really we're currently in the kind of data and insights stage of that, talking to our people through surveys, one-on-one focus groups, understanding what currently happens, what would they be wanting from this, so we can start really rolling this out in July to help connect people to opportunities across the group.
So it's interesting that if I want to sum this up, it would be for ANZ, it would be sustainability being the core. And then looking at APAC, a very diverse and large region, you've got the internal town marketplace that's moving about. So moving into, I suppose both of them complement each other, both the concepts of sustainability and also internal marketplace. Is looking at internal marketplaces, I mean, is this the kind of approach that you see to nurture high potential talent within a large organization like Publicis? Would this be the way for nurturing that internal talent?
Absolutely. I think it's a really great way to harness growth. I think our high potential talent, they want to move, they want to develop, and they want to do it really quickly. And Publicis is quite uniquely positioned to do that because we are a group, we kind of are a connected platform of agencies. So when you come into our organisation, you'll come in to an agency. However, you have the ability to go to another agency. You have an ability to go to another totally different role with different skills, and then you have the ability to go to a different market. So all of those an accelerator for growth, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting, ever since coming into this APAC role, we can see there are centre of excellence in different parts of Asia Pacific. We've got great production hub in Malaysia. How do we actually leverage that? How do we leverage those skills? Can we move someone from there into one of the other markets to help teach and accelerate that product or that capability in another market? So we see this as a really strategic approach to how we start to leverage the skills we have. And also the knowledge that you have in an organisation is so valuable.
Absolutely.
And it's so important. I actually would say it's business critical to retain that knowledge and to really reduce that business disruption when you have someone leaving the organisation. So it's really interesting. I mean, businesses that do it well have around about 24% of their open roles are filled internally. So, at the moment in ANZ, we're sitting at around 12%, which isn't bad. We can get better. And I think if you start to utilize that, it becomes a really strong business tool as well against other competitors.
Now, how do you put such an approach in place within a large organization like Publicis? I mean, there must be, I would assume there is some kind of step-by-step, or there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done, stakeholder management, and just getting people all on board with this program.
Yeah, interesting you say that. We were talking before about change and the importance of deep organisational change when you're trying to make a major shift in something. So, our markets do it relatively well at the moment, but if we're going to really accelerate this to where it needs to be, then it is organisational behaviour change. And it's really interesting, some of the data that's coming out around how do I have the conversation with my manager, even to the point of I don't even know what would it be like to live in another country. Am I going to like it? Am I not? So there's so many other elements. There's also just the practical things around it's really hard to get visas in certain countries depending on the level that you're at, for example. So really what we're doing is the deep work of those insights and understanding. And off the back of that, we're using a similar rollout to what we did when we introduced a flexibility program back in 2019, pre-COVID, and it was all about gathering those insights. What are the barriers that exist to success? This is where we want to go. What are the barriers? And then we create workshops, behaviour change workshops around that. We create playbooks for managers and people and education and training to get us there. But when we do that, we start at the top. So we already have alignment on this across our APAC Exco. Everyone's really excited. They can see the value to business. They can see the value to our people. And so therefore we had permission, which is important to get that alignment. But then the insights will inform the barriers, and then we pick apart the barriers with our leaders and managers, and then we give them the tools to make it very easy to access. How do I do it? How do I get connected to jobs? And we measure the success off the back of that. So I think that's a really important part. If you want to take it to the next level, and this is where, some organisations do it really well, you need to understand your skills in your organisation, and then you tie your skills to learning. And this is what we've started as well, and going, okay, once we know our skills, once we understand the future skills we need, how do we actually help people reskill? So if you look at Gen Zs, for example, they're wanting 18 jobs, 6 careers. They're not going to wait for you. Their tenure is about 1.4 years. So if you haven't got anything for them in that time, they're going to be gone. So how do we actually play into that? And if you look at now, the workforce of 2030 is going to be a third Gen Zs. Already in our organisation, the Gen Zs match the Gen X. So we need to, instead of fighting it, we need to move with this. So how do we actually get people with certain skills and then create learning opportunities for them to be able to pivot across the business in different ways? And I think that's when you really unlock the potential, when you have that foundation of a learning program that helps support that movement and that internal talent marketplace.
And that interestingly goes back to the whole concept of sustainable talent that we were talking about earlier, right? So it sustains itself, it grows by itself. How does external recruitment, getting new people into the organization, how does that fit into this picture? Is there like an optimal balance between who you need to hire, how much, what percentage of talent you need to hire from outside, or how much can you look? I know you mentioned 24% earlier, but what have you found so far?
Look, a certain amount of attrition is a good thing, let's face it. I think it's important to get fresh thinking, different diverse backgrounds into the organisation, for sure. Do I know the perfect level? No. When I've done a bit of research, organisations like Nestle, for example, they kind of have got that level of about 24% of their open roles. So organisations are still recruiting externally. That will always happen, and it should always happen, by the way. But I think I just think organisations perhaps aren't harnessing what they already have I think actually some organisations did that quite well during COVID. So they kind of bunkered down a little bit, and they started going, okay, how can we be a little bit more innovative of how we use our staff across different parts of the organisation? And isn't it interesting? It's in times of need or pressure or stress, or when something happens that we're not expecting, when the best innovation and the ideas come out sometimes.
Indeed, yes,
Because we're put under pressure for change.
Yeah.
But I think we need to hold on to the benefits that came off the back of that. So to answer your question, I'm not sure the perfect mix, but for me, I would always believe it's important to have that balance between both.
This might also be, I mean, listening to what you're saying, this might also be a strategy to sort of future-proof. Is there such a thing as future-proofing talent, for instance?
Absolutely. If you think of some of the stats that are coming about AI, I mean, it's well and truly been around for ages, but there's going to be something like in the next 5 years, 97 million new types of roles. Right? There's going to be about 85 million roles totally displaced. They'll be gone. So we really need to radically transform the roles we have. And that's where before it was like breaking down the skills you have. What are the future skills? And there's going to be some skills in the middle that are going to become redundant. So how do we also help our people? How do we help them move and pivot and shift into those new future skills, or into the skills that are here now, actually, that, some of us haven't caught up with. And I think that's a really important way that we can support our people and also move with that transformation that we're experiencing in our businesses.
For any HR leader or people leader who's looking into maybe putting such a program or such a structure in place in the long term, really this, brings about so many business benefits. It really retains the talent, retains the people, retains the knowledge that you need to drive the business forward. So for anyone who's looking to structure such a program for their organization, I mean, what kind of time frame, for instance, would they have to be looking at for planning and to move into actual execution later on?
Yeah. Look, it depends where your business is now. So firstly, you've got to do an audit or an analysis on where do you currently sit. Like, do you move your staff around at all? Is it even acceptable? Do they know how to access it? So I think that step is really important. Otherwise, you take off and you could be taking off into the wrong spot. So firstly, you need to do that analysis. And then I think it's also important for them to know, okay, what do I want from my career? Where do I want to go? And help people and give people tools around that. So we have, a 21st century career toolkit. We have an internal career guidance coach that helps them understand that. So you're helping the people at the same time that you're making business change. And then really it's looking at where, to my point before, once you get that analysis, okay, in order for this to be successful, we need to go here. What are our barriers? And that's going to be different for every organisation. So for us, we have great connection across our group. So that's not a cultural issue for us, but it may be for another organisation. They might have quite territorial departments or companies within their organisation. So that might be something they need to work on. I think the second part is, do people even know what's the awareness that this can happen or that they can do it? If they don't have the awareness, how do you create the awareness? And then creating the process that is clear, that everyone has agreed upon. So there's not going to be any bumps along the way. So once you do start that internal talent marketplace, that it's actually quite a smooth, rewarding process for everyone. Because again, if you start it and people have bad experiences, they won't want to go there again, and it'll quite quickly carry through your organisation as a bad experience. So absolutely do your data and analysis and your insights first. Where are you at? Where do you want to be? And that will reveal, is it cultural change you need? Is it process change? Do you not actually understand the skills or the roles that you have in your organisation? If that's the case, that's going to be much deeper. Yeah. Because you're going to need to look at a skills taxonomy, plotting out what are those future skills. And then the other really important part of this is your learning and development piece. Mm-hmm. So currently, is that lining up to where you want to go? Have you got the right access to craft skill training, power skill training that is going to need to be there to support that? So, but again, this will all get revealed when you do that kind of map of where you're at now. But there's some very clear steps to take along the way. To answer your question around timing, depending where you're at, it could take 6 months, it could take 2 years, but there are quick wins you can have along the way.
So this also involves a significant change management piece, right? So is this something that falls under the people space, or is this a collaborative effort with maybe a different department or other managers or senior level leaders?
So, yeah, I mean, I believe we do a lot of change in the people space. There's a lot of change management. It's ongoing, I think it's continuous change management, especially in the industry that we work in. I do work closely with internal comms and change manager. I'm just very lucky that she has both of those skills, because communication and internal communication and how you go to your business and your people with this is extremely important. And I'm lucky enough to have that in the team, because I think there's a very close synergy to obviously people and HR and how we communicate to our people. So really fortunate in that. And we have done major change programs as we go along. I think if you don't have that in your team, I think it really helps to get access to it. Even if you have to bring a change consultant in if you want to, or if you've got someone across the business that can help with that, even to plot out where you're going, what you need to do, and some of those key principles of change.
It's a process that involves lots of data, lots of analysis into what's going on. And in terms of using technology to help augment these efforts that you have, what kinds of technologies do you use, or rather, how does that come into play when you roll out or when you conceptualize something?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And if we're talking about AI, Publicis way back in 2017 actually went into partnership with, did a partnership on a project and a piece of technology with Microsoft. We call it Manatal, and it's an AI-powered technology that connects all of our staff across the globe. That has been, going for the last, nearly 6 years now. Which has really helped us, and it's a great piece of technology to use as a platform, but also to give us insights and to be able to keep across what our people want, what skills they have, and it really helps us to personalise our approach. Remember I spoke earlier about people don't want a one-size-fits-all anymore. They want something for them. So we have this incredible technology where all our staff have a profile with their skills, with their passion, with what they like to do outside of work, with their career ambitions, and we can actually feed them knowledge, learning pathways. They can connect to jobs and opportunities across the group. They can put their ideas and go on a gig or an open brief, where we could put a brief up there from anywhere across the world, and we can have anywhere across the world come in. We have mentor matching by Marcel. So it has been a really integral part of how we better understand our people, and also how we start to create this personalised experience for them around their own growth and understanding and knowledge in their roles.
So, all these insights have been so good to see, especially when, it takes a lot of effort to be able to bring all these elements together and roll them out, with the help of technology. And of course, in a large organization like Publicis, it's both a challenge and also an advantage to have that many perspectives all in one place and being able to take advantage of that. So thank you so much, Pauly, for all your insights. And these have been really generous insights, and they're valuable to me as well and to the audience. So for those who maybe listening in and want to pick up a conversation with you, where can they find you?
Best place is LinkedIn. It's Pauly Grant. Contact me on that and I'll definitely get back to you.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining us, Pauly. And we have been in conversation with Pauly Grant from Publicis Groupe. Thank you for joining us, and remember to subscribe. Stay tuned for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment.